Welcome to The Nevers Episode 2 Exposure, directed by Joss Whedon and written by Jane Espenson. Now, Jane and I have a taxing relationship. A relationship quite like an old wooden roller coaster. You're riding it and enjoying the bunny hills, ups and downs, and especially the straightaways, until suddenly you see a turn on the track before you. You know you're going to hit that fucker hard, be slammed against the side of the coaster car, and possibly snap your neck, but there's no stopping it until... Okay, well, that's super dramatic, but we're talking about Jane Espenson here. She always manages to have something to do with the media I enjoy, so believe you me, her and I go way back. I've loved her shit on Battlestar Galactica, Game of Thrones, Caprica, and even Gilmore Girls. Yeah. She's also got like a slew of other credits that are quite impressive, but this brings us to her work with Joss, which include Buffy, Angel, Firefly, and Dollhouse, pretty much everything he's ever done. She can write incredible episodes like Conversations with Dead People.
What's happening? Did she say anything? I'm coming towards you, okay?
Intervention.
Who of them?
Hey, I know this. They're both Buffy.
No, she's a robot.
The Harsh Light of Day.
I can't believe you just did that!
And Earshot.
This is astounding.
It was happening out in the hallway. Principal Snyder has walk like an Egyptian stuck in his head. And the boys of the school are seriously disturbed.
But then on the other hand, we have the episodes like Doomed.
You're coming back out.
Superstar.
Good evening, everyone. I'd like to dedicate this song to some friends of mine. A very special couple who've been going through a tough time.
Life Serial.
I'm not leaving until I get a mummy hand.
Storyteller.
You've already met Buffy. She's beautiful with a lion's heart.
And let's not forget the Buffy Season 8 comic arc about the teddy bears coming alive and eating people like vampires. I can't forget that one. Since this is a Joss Whedon show, I'm focusing on her Buffy stuff specifically here because she wrote more for Buffy than any other show she's ever worked on. So there's this thing that surrounds all her work that I like to call
the Espenson effect.
Now, if you're familiar with any of the previously mentioned episodes, you'd know a lot of her writing shares a common theme, specifically when it comes to her work on Buffy. She likes to write an episode that displaces the characters from otherwise normal situations for them, which is why we have episodes where Jonathan changes the fabric of reality so much so that he inserts himself into the theme song. Buffy can read minds for a little bit.
God, Xander, is that all you think about?
We see the entire episode through Andrew's eyes, or the entire episode is told over a series of 3 separate yet connected conversations. Hate it or love it, and there's definitely a debate to either side of those, you can absolutely say she has a unique voice that's distinct to herself.
The Espenson effect.
I could go on about Jane's style for an entire hour here, but let's just jump into this week's episode. This has nothing to do with any content inside the episode, but can we talk about how incredibly epic the Previously On was? Really highlights how dense the episode was last week, for sure. We open with 2 women that work in a clothing store talking about the Touched and the massacre at the theater. Malady is pretty much widely known at this point, and one of the women gets scolded and hit on by her boss and is told that her gloves are too dirty and falling apart. this is true though. But we learn that she's supposed to pay for her new gloves herself, and this man is acting in a typical, the way men just do on the show for now, kind of way. There's something about it this time, specifically the way the man is acting, that bothered me more than in the last episode. If you remember, I previously stated, metaphor is very, very heavy. But what works for me in regards to these villains is you have a lot going on in this first episode, and he's balancing a lot. And that seems to happen here, but the ultimate point of the scene is this woman realizing that she's touched, so I'm fine with it. It's just less inspiring than I would have liked to see. This woman's turn, which is apparently the name for powers of the touched, is having the ability to make things float when she touches them. Watching a second time, I realize her gloves usually prevent this from happening at work, where she's like touching things, but where the hole in her glove is where it touches the hat. Everyone sees this in the store when it's floating, they get scared, they try to stop her, this happens. Stop her! She escapes, and we see she's heading to the orphanage, finding out through posters that must have been hanging throughout the city, I guess? Frankie, the inspector looking for Mary, the singin' bitch, raids the orphanage. Mrs. True has become a suspect, as he states she left her dress outside the theater and they found it, that time that she disrobed. Mrs. True tells him that Mary is indeed touched, but
I can assure you she is nothing like me. She's wonderful. How are you not wonderful?
I appreciate this scene's ability to sort of carry over into this episode from the last one. If you weren't paying attention to like characters' names, Mary, Swan, Frankie, and their intentions, you'd kind of be super confused. It just kind of throws it all out there. I appreciate a show that doesn't treat me like an asinine jumping bean that can't keep up, so while I was too stoned to fully grasp everything thrown at me this scene on the first watch, and was actually an asinine jumping bean that couldn't keep up, the second watch definitely worked a little bit better for me. Lavinia comes in and stops the raid by power-upping over Frankie. She has a brief conversation with Penance and True about how 3 rogue touch declared war on society in the theater, how they're now all a suspect, and instead of letting society come to them and attack, they should attend a party at Lavinia's house where a lot of the elite are going to be, and bring some of the touched with them to show off their good-natured turns to the world. We're transported back to the evil patriarchal men that run Parliament, and they're discussing the positive effect the shooting at the theater had on the public's increasingly negative image of the touched. They're putting together a group of government to deal with the touch, which will ultimately be them, and just, you know, using it to their advantage to deal with the
feminine plague.
Like, okay, these dudes still kinda work for me, but like I said, I didn't mind it in the first episode, but they need more meat on their bones soon, or else I'm gonna get mad. Like, do these guys just sit around in lounge chairs all day reading papers and smoking cigars, or do they, like, have lives? We know one of them had a daughter and she died when she was touched, and I'd like to see that explored more, please. I wish this scene had a bit of movement and the characters were like doing something with their hands that makes this scene more interesting and less boring. Think of Candy in the background of Twin Peaks: The Return. That's interesting. And that mistake ultimately falls to the director, the man Joss himself. It doesn't need movement, but I think it would make it more interesting. This scene could be better in the long run, depending on how this storyline with Parliament kind of pans out, so it's too close to call how this will go. Lord Mason and Swan have a conversation, and it starts with Swan referencing Dracula. And I literally read an entire fucking article from some news source that I can't remember now, talking about how this was a call out to vampires and Joss's other work, and there was literally an entire fucking article written about that shit. Like, if I didn't know what reaching for a story to meet quota was before, Now I definitely do, because what the hell? Lord Mason is asking Swan about his brothel, and there's a huge director pet peeve of mine here in this scene. Swan doesn't want to discuss it anymore, and he turns to leave the conversation, but sits in a chair no more than like 5 feet away from where they're standing. So what happens? Mason comes over and continues the conversation next to him, and we're about to have another scene where the characters are just stagnant. One of my favorite moments of Game of Thrones is when Tywin is skinning the deer, because it happens during a normal 2-up shot, talking heads conversation, but Tywin skinning the deer makes the scene, I don't know, juicy, and it's also the character's introduction, so it's cool. But this walking to get them sitting there, or one standing and one sitting, really bothers me. There's a rule in directing and acting where you learn that your characters do things with intention, right? If they want to leave the room, they will leave the room, just like in real life, and sometimes there'll be conflict along the way to leaving the room, but they'll try to leave with intention. This movement suggests Swan doesn't want to talk anymore, but him sitting in the chair 5 feet away says otherwise. This can be two things. One, Joss wanted to film the characters sitting, or basically stagnant, which is easier, and therefore stationary, so that's why this happens, and breaks up the scene for me, honestly. Or two, Swan is playing with Mason and is like, I don't want to talk, wink, wink, wink. Both scenarios are totally valid. The same thing then happens where Swan gets up to get a drink, and I'm just as bothered by it. On the plus side, this conversation, though, is fully loaded. We learn that Swan's father was one of the most gifted minds in England and has since gone crazy, or senile, or dementia. Who knows? That Swan has control over some of the members in Parliament because of his status. That Swan had a brother, Caleb, who drowned, and this might be a soft spot about why Swan's father went crazy. The last 30 seconds of this conversation is juicy as hell. It was a shaky run to get there, but girl, we got there. True and Pennant stand and try to pick girls to bring to the party to show off the touched. They have a super adorable exchange.
Wendy.
That's a rotten thing, but no, it's fair, and it rhymes.
Briefly discuss how strange it is that Lavinia started the orphanage but never sticks around for long, and then Pennant shows True 2 inventions she's made. Glasses, she says, will protect True from Melody's eye glowy thing, as they still don't know her turn, and a fire extinguisher type device to put out the firebender's flames. The second doesn't work, and Pennant shakes it in frustration, and this serves as a scene break. This is a classic Espenson thing.
The Espenson effect.
And something we see a lot in her other work. She loves to make scenes that end with a sort of one-off line or comedic moment. It's sort of a staple of her style, and it happens quite a bit in this episode, actually. I know it may seem like I'm nitpicking, but like I really absolutely do love film and writing and how the two come together. So like these aren't complaints, these are more observations, because I'm fascinated with why things work, why things don't work, why things are cheesy, why things aren't cheesy, so welcome to my mind. We get a short scene of the woman from the first episode making her way to the orphanage and being betrayed by her friend. Pennant takes the girls to the party along with Lavinia, and they were all told to wear blue bows to identify themselves. It's supposed to make you uncomfortable. It made me uncomfortable. Still at the orphanage, a very flamboyant woman comes to True, tells her she's a very successful prostitute and works with high men of status, and they've suddenly started divulging all their secrets and innermost desires to her. They regret this now and want to kill her, so she's come to the orphanage until the heat dies off. True doesn't believe her until she says,
Mary is the voice of the
Galan? What? This scene is written exceptionally well, and hats off to Jane Espenson here. Well done. Mrs. True brings this lady to Frankie so she can make him divulge all his secrets. He shares that he's so intent on finding Mary and rescuing her because they were engaged, set to be married, and she left him at the altar. But his orders say to stop Malady at any cost, regardless of the cost of who dies. He gets upset when he realizes what made him divulge his inner struggles, threatens True, but eventually they sit down and have a chat where True tells Frankie that Mary can sing the song that she done do sings.
What's it about?
Hope.
This is another excellent scene. It's almost like the episode starts off rocky, but then progresses from here. Like this is where Jane wanted the characters more than thinking about how to get them to these conversations. But we're here. I'm grateful. Give me more. Mary is being held in a warehouse-like place somewhere unspecified, and her crew screws with her a bit. One that we originally think is Captive 2 orders her to sing, says she's sacrificing her toes in order to become touched, while a man comes in and gives Mary leftover food, which turns out not to be food, it's a rat, and one of the two of them can alter people's perceptions of reality, but who knows which one. My money is on the dude, maybe. The firebender comes in.
Bonfire Annie.
And they mentioned earlier in the episode, actually, I didn't say anything about it, that her name was Bonfire Annie, and I just thought it was like some funny joke nickname that True and Penance made up, but nope, I guess it is actually Bonfire Annie, and I hate it, but also kind of love it. In the same way the name Buffy gives me that feeling of nausea and utter admiration, WWBD. The two roadies mention Bonfire Annie is only hired and not a believer, and leave the scene because they're late for church. What? Malady exposes herself from behind Mary, creepy crawly. Annie states they have Mrs. True's address for the orphanage. Malady says she's looking for True's soul and the all of her. Then there's a moment that made me horny, and Malady asks, forces Mary to sing. Mary says she can't, it only comes when she's scared or frightened, and that...
It helps.
And we have another example of
the Espenson effect.
When Malady breaks the serious moment with...
I just meant, have you always wanted to be in the theatre?
And 1, oh my god, this face is so cute and I just want it on a pillow. And 2, this is okay, this is very much like a Whedon vibe. All his shows do it, but when Jane does it in an episode written by her, it's not handled in the same way. So it doesn't work as well for me the multiple times it happens in this episode, because it feels like someone trying to emulate someone else. And I think it comes down to this. Most of the time, Joss's drama breaks or the funny random line come in the middle of the scene and isn't used as anything other than a funny break of the tension. Hate it or love it, that's what it is. Even Shakespeare's plays did this. And because it's in the middle of the scene, the line itself isn't used as a way to pull us from the conversation being had and transfer us into another one. In other words, the writer having to find a way that isn't metaphorically slapping the viewer across the face with a brick and anti-tone moments to serve as the bookend of a scene. Ending and beginning scenes in writing a script is hard, and I could talk about this topic more in detail, but in summary, that's how I feel about those moments, and it will happen again in this episode if you didn't believe me earlier. I think it just comes down to where the random line is placed, or if it does happen at the end, what the random out-of-tone line actually is. Penance and Augustus find each other at the party after, in the previous episode, realizing they were both touched when Mary sang in the theater, and they sneak off together after a sweet exchange with Lucy. I think I like her. This sneak off draws some eyes. And this was absolutely my favorite moment in the entire episode.
I've always been keen on birds.
They end up having a conversation, and he explains his turn is that he can transfer his consciousness into birds. Sort of like a Game of Thrones, Bran warging thing. It's really gentle, the whole scene.
Oh!
And sweet. And I think it felt the most natural of any of the scenes this episode, honestly.
It feels like flying.
This is an example of
The Espenson effect.
to finish out the scene, but a good use of it, honestly. Can't be hating it here. The woman that's been looking for the orphanage for the past 30 minutes of the episode gets there, and oh shit, it ain't the orphanage! I had a feeling that the posters were super strange and seemed out of place for how Penance and True seemed to operate. Cut back to Malady and Mary. And Malady has another awesome monologue. So once the season is done and we see the whole picture, I'll go back and look at all of her monologues, as I have so many theories now, and this video is long enough as it is. So comment at the bottom if you'd like to see something like that sooner rather than later. Buffy was known for really long foreshadowing. Firefly had it, but it never panned out. So that'll be better later if all goes well. Essentially, we know she's the only one that remembered the UFO that came down and touched them, and she thinks she's been chosen by angels, and she's very angry with Mary and the fact that she can sing because the song takes away her pain, and she somehow enjoys the pain. Oh, also, can we stop with the Drusilla comparison for Malady? I mean, yes, they're both crazy. Cool. But it is offensive to put my girl, Drusilla, who loved dressing up, being fabulous, and manifested her insanity through soft-spokenness, only occasionally lashing out with pure aggression, with Malady, who doesn't mind being dirty and is horribly aggressive in her insanity and rage. They're both crazy, yes, but saying it's the same thing, Joss, is like saying an M&M and a Reese's Pieces are the same because of their shape. Bite me. Malady states there's a demon after her.
The woman who sheds her skin. Oh, she's coming. She wants a song.
Galan?
They say you shit when you hang.
The Espenson effect.
That's 3 times so far if you've been counting. This line works better with what happens later in the episode, but Malady delivers it so fast I had no idea what she was even saying, and it comes off less like she has an idea and more like she's once again just comedically delivering a line. This is the directing's fault, as I would have suggested her slowing down the line a bit instead of delivering it for humor. Just me personally. Frankie and True have a great scene where they're discussing Malady's power and how Mary might fit into her grand scheme, and True states that she doesn't think Mary fits anywhere into her plan. Mary makes you feel loved, while Malady makes you feel terror and rage.
Which is terrifying. Someone like her.
This is, of course, a reference to True's
Dead husband.
Did you know that she had a
Dead husband.
Augustus and Penance are still talking, and she's jerking herself off about her electricity turn, and he's jerking himself off about how it reminds him of a flock of birds, and it's cute and funny, and one of them is going to die! Augustus then gets scolded by Mommy not to be seen with Penance anymore because people at the party were talking, and he needs to never see her again because a girl who is touched and Irish cannot bear the Bidlow name. Augustus, in the next scene, immediately tells her to leave the party because the entertainment, you people, is too much for the guests. And it's sort of sad, but also happened real quickly. Like, this emotionally treated moment happened, like, really, really soon. Like, I was only starting to ship them, but maybe this is supposed to make me ship them harder? Who knows? So what does Augustus do? He goes to the brothel like any man would. True finds where Malady and the gang are holding up when True has a vision.
Blacklight, if that's happened.
In the meeting with Frankie, and we learn it's the little man's ability to make anyone believe anything he says. Dennis O'Hare comes back and he's got the woman we were following earlier to do experiments on her to find out what makes her touched. But before he can start, one of his henchmen tells him the boss is coming. Love Dennis O'Hare. Give me more. True goes to find Malady, and I'm slightly reminded of Augustus goes to the brothel, he learns Swan has some touched women in there, and Swan says that while everyone sees danger in the touched, he sees profit. Swan offers Augustus a business partnership at the brothel. Malady waits for True.
You found me!
Malady is like, shed your skin, you fucking whore. And True is confused. They duel! They talk about Mary.
Oh, is she your new best friend?
And I'm reminded of...
Why would I be mad at my best friend?
Malady reveals Mary is held high and on the edge, ready to be hanged. Malady keeps going, shed, you stupid bitch. And True is like, what? And then Malady goes, Molly. And True realizes something, and she goes, Sarah. And like, what? They know each other? But True didn't realize till now? And True is Molly? Oh, Amalia. Ha! Just got that. Is this like a Doctor Who sort of situation, though?
This isn't my face.
And she can change the way she looks, like shedding her skin? Then why did she not change the way she looked from when she was first touched? I don't know, I have so many questions. And now that I'm recording this, I'm thinking that, like, maybe she means shed your skin, like how she apparently just, like, dumped Malady. Like, shed your problems away? Like, forget about them? Maybe. Malady says that True kind of screwed her over, and True's like, you're right, I didn't have a choice. And Malady is like, choose. And then Penance is on the top of the thing, and my heart is pounding, and I legitimately question what was gonna happen, because as you know, Joss loves to kill people, especially when you think they're the main character, or one of the main characters. Malady hands True a gun, and oh my god, I'm on the edge of my fucking seat! Also, shut the fuck up about Amalia being Buffy, this line proves the difference.
I do have a mission. I didn't ask for it. I'm not cut out for it.
Do you want the candy metaphor again? True ends up shooting herself in the stomach, which upsets Malady, because she wanted True to have to sacrifice a friend, like she feels she was sacrificed for True's mission, apparently. True, as she lay in pain, says that the mission doesn't need her, but she needs them, and also doesn't need Malady. And I really think True is like, I don't know, a higher being, alien type thing? I don't know. Or she's the Doctor. Anything could do at this point. True shoots Malady, bam, in the shoulder, and Malady tries to hit True back, bam, but Firebender Bernie Annie stops her, and what? Frankie comes in because he was behind True, and she knew that this would happen. She set it up earlier in the episode, and Penance tells them to get True to Dr. Horatio now! She wakes up and we have a cute family building lines. True is like, I want to explain some stuff about Malady, and Penance is like, nah, not right now, let's live. And it's nice and sweet, but like, goddamn, just tell me. Did she leave her on a planet for 2,000 years and tell her she'd come back and be her friend because she was annoying and needy, and now she's coming back to destroy the woman that used to be her best friend but has now shapeshifted into someone that doesn't remember her, or what? Frankie and Mary have a nice scene where he asks her if she wants to stay at the orphanage and if her being touched was the reason she didn't go through with the wedding. She doesn't want to talk about it, and I don't blame the girl. Dennis O'Hare is finishing up preparations for the arrival of the boss, and it turns out to be Lavinia? Like, alright, work. She's running both operations to maybe suss out the quote-unquote good ones from the quote-unquote bad ones, and using the quote-unquote bad ones to unearth this glowing ball. She says this is war. War with whom? War with what? We see the people that he's operated on. They appear to be given some sort of lobotomy and are slaves and digging this glowy ball up, and I can't help but be reminded of... Overall, it wasn't as inspiring as I found the first episode to be, but it was intriguing nonetheless, and I will continue to watch, all while being incredibly dense to the point that I didn't take it all in until I watched it twice, which could have been the marijuana. If you enjoyed this video, check back every week as we look at the next 4 episodes of The Nevers. Leave your theories and discussions down below in the comments, or critiques of me and things you would have liked to have seen discussed more or even less in this analysis video from yours truly. Check out the video for the first episode if you haven't already seen it. Give me a fucking like, and think about subscribing maybe. See you all next week for episode 3.